Elementor may be the top WordPress page builder in 2021, but there are many alternatives to this popular builder. Today, we'll explore some of the main contenders and cover the key pros and cons of each, including pricing, feature set, those kinds of things. Now, before I get started though, be sure to let me know in the comments section your preferred WordPress page builder, because I would love to hear from you and get your feedback and comments. Okay, first up, let me quickly list out all the alternatives I'll be covering in this video today, so if you want to jump around, full timestamps are listed down below. So first up, Brizy, free and pro. Bricks Builder, Beaver Builder, Divi, WPBakery, Visual Composer, Oxygen Builder, and Zion Builder. Now, Brizy and Brizy Pro have both been around for several years and have a solid community behind them. Brizy Cloud is the latest addition to this family and offers some really exciting features. But for this video, we'll stick to the WordPress Page Builder version for comparison. Now, let's start by talking about the free version of Brizy and what that offers us. You have all of the usual tools like text, images, and video, along with many other options. However, while Elementor only provides a form in the Pro version, Brizy does at least offer a basic form that uses the WordPress email sending method. If you need SMTP, Gmail, or third-party integration with the likes of MailerLite and MailChimp, you are going to need to opt for Brizy Pro. Now, on top of these basic building features, you also get access to some templating features like single post and archive templates. This lets you work on more complex designs using these global templates. Now, another area where Brizy excels is in the quality of its blocks and full page templates. They're excellent and can easily be used as they are with a little modification to fit into your website's style. Another great feature is the way in which Brizy has set up their global options. It's super simple to get your head around and it's integrated directly into the clean and simple interface. This is again in stark contrast to what Elementor offers, where even though there are extensive global styling options, they do just feel a little bit bolted on and not a fully integrated feature in the builder itself. Now finally, there are some really cool and well thought out features in many of the widgets that make building more complex layouts an absolute breeze. Let me give you an example. Let's take the accordion element. With Elementor, you are pretty restricted in what you can insert into the accordion sections unless you have Elementor Pro and you can use the templating feature. Now with Brizy, you have access to the container element inside the accordion itself. So this means you effectively have a layout inside a layout, but without the need to rely on hacks and templates. It's really cool and it's also available in the likes of the timeline element, so I would recommend if you've got Brizy Pro, check it out and see how it all works. Now when you're ready to open up even more options, then you can opt for Brizy Pro, which adds a lot more functionality. With Pro, you have access to the full complement of templating features that include the ability to manage your WooCommerce layouts. In addition to that, you also get the pop-up builder, dynamic data, and much, much more. A beautifully simple interface, intuitive container builder for accordions, timelines, etc., a shallow learning curve, some basic template and options in the free version, a pop-up builder, dynamic content integration, WooCommerce integration in the Pro version. It also has great theme support and well-designed block templates, a slower development and release cycle. The dynamic content is not as well supported. There's no third-party API for external plugins and add-ons. Now let's talk a little bit about the pricing and my thoughts on Brizy. Firstly, at the time of this video, there's a $299 lifetime deal still running for unlimited websites. However, if you prefer to go for an annual payment, they offer two plans, a $49 and a $99 plan, respectively. Okay, so this is our Brizy layout. Again, I've tried to pick a template that's kind of in keeping with most of the other styles that we have. Similar kind of length, layout, those kinds of things. So let's go ahead and drop these into dashboards for GT metrics and for page speed. So we'll run that one and we'll do exactly the same on Google page speed. Okay, so looking at the GT metric score is not coming back amazing. Fair play. I'm quite surprised at that, if I'm honest, but there are some large images, so maybe that's a contributing factor. And if we take a look at the page speed insights, again, you can see mobile is not looking amazing. Desktop, is looking pretty good. So there's still some work to do on the mobile side of things. Again, like I say, I think there's some quite large images being used, and you probably could benefit from using caching and those kinds of things. And this is something to take into consideration across all of these speed tests. They're just a basic benchmark to give you some idea. Don't take these as indicative of the results that you'll get. Now, Brizy is a great alternative to Elementor and Elementor Pro, but it does still have some shortcomings. Key among them is the lack of open API for third-party add-ons to open up what can be done. It's also somewhat limited when it comes to dynamic options. However, if Brizy offers the tools that you need to get the job done, it's a solid option and one that I personally really enjoy using. So next on our list is Brizy Builder, a relatively new addition to the page builder market. Now, before I talk more about the features, let me quickly say that while I refer to Brizy Builder as a page builder, it's more like Divi in the way it includes a theme. But where it differs from Divi is that it can't be used with any other themes. Brizy Builder and the Brizy theme are all in one and cannot be separated. So if you have a theme that you enjoy using and you want to use that with Brizy, unfortunately, you are out of luck, I'm afraid. Okay, with that taken care of, what is there to like about Brizy? Well, quite a lot actually. I know it's only been around for 7 months at the time of releasing this video, but in that time it's covered a heck of a lot of ground and actually launched with a lot of really great features included. Yes, you have all the usual widgets to build a typical web page or website, but also comes with a fairly extensive range of dynamic options and works with all of the major meta field tools on the market right now. It also allows you to easily add dynamic information to almost any part of your design. Now, of note here is the ability to easily add meta information directly inline. In other words, if you're writing a welcome message, for example, to your logged in users in a paragraph of text, you can simply drop in the shortcode or meta key information into the text itself where needed, and that will be dynamically replaced on the live site. For me, I think that's just really cool. Now, once you get used to working like this, you'll find Elementor Pro's handling of prefix and suffix text very basic and also very limiting. Now, on top of these features, you also have a solid start to working with WooCommerce templates. Now, at the time of releasing this, you can only create the archive and the single product template files. But by the time version 1.4 is released, which hopefully won't be too much longer, full WooCommerce templating will be included. It's a combination of a theme and a page builder all in one. Got solid integration with dynamic plugins like ACF and Metabox, fast load times and well optimized code. The developers are listening to what users actually want and implementing what makes the most sense. Currently, there's no loop builder and no way to handle dynamic conditions, but they are on the list of features to be added. There's no advanced dynamic data tools to handle the likes of repeaters or nested repeaters, etc. Okay, let's start our Brizy speed test by taking a quick look at what we're going to be using. So this is just one of the standard templates that ship with the fairly limited collection of designs that we have with Brizy, but it's indicative of a typical kind of layout. Several images, some text, some styling, those kinds of things. Hopping over onto Google PageSpeed Insights, we'll analyze on there as well. Okay, let's take a look at the GT metrics. So we can see coming back from here, we've got a lower performance. If I'm honest, I'm a little surprised that the performance isn't better, but the web vitals, as we say, pay a small amount of notice to those. Let's take a look at the Google PageSpeed Insights. And we're coming back with 85, which is again a pretty respectable start. Desktop is giving us 90, so there's a little bit of work left to be done with Brizy, but pretty solid start, I would say, for most use cases. Now, Brizy Builder is making a lot of waves in the WordPress page builder scene right now, with a lot of users getting really excited about the features it launched with and the way in which the developers are actively listening to the community, looking at the current page builder's shortcomings and developing an interesting and solid product based upon that information. Sadly though, it's still early days and there are still some important features missing to make it one that I can truly offer as a suggested direct replacement for all but the most simple of website design projects. But, and it is a big but, this is one to watch, and if you're feeling flush, grab yourself that lifetime deal and keep an eye on its development. This is one that I am truly excited about for the future. Now, Beaver Builder is one of the OG page builders for WordPress and has a long history of happy and faithful users, so it's definitely a well-established platform. One of its key strengths is its stability. The developers are less interested in bells and whistles and more interested in creating a solid, reliable platform for their users to take advantage of. Now, Beaver Builder comes in two parts, the Builder and Beaver Themer. If all you want to do is create and edit the content on the page with a page builder, you can simply buy and use Beaver Builder. However, when you want to go beyond those basics, you'll really need to invest in Beaver Themer to start to get the most out of the platform. Once you open up the builder, you'll find it quite different to the likes of Elementor, and unfortunately, in my opinion, it does just feel a little bit dated. There's definitely some similarities in some areas to the likes of Divi or Visual Composer. For me, I'm not the biggest fan, but your mileage may vary considerably. Now, once you dive in, you'll find the usual complement of standard widgets or modules, as Beaver Builder refers to them. There's a decent collection of pre-built layouts, and while they're solid, they're not the most inspiring designs out there. Probably good to learn from how to build your layouts, but not something you'll be using as the basis for your next award-winning design. Once you add in Beaver Themer though, you open up a lot more potential, and there's a solid support for meta fields and custom post types, as well as the ability to get in and edit the actual underlying code of various elements should the need arise. Now, while you may get comfortable with Beaver Builder quite quickly, I think the learning curve is just a little bit steeper than the likes of Brizy. But spend some time learning it and you'll be able to build some incredibly feature-rich websites with relative ease. A well-established product. It focuses on stability over features. Even the standard plan offers use on unlimited websites. Multi-site support on Pro and above plans. Supports custom post types and dynamic data with tools like ACF. The product is split into two parts, Builder and Themer. Themer is needed to be able to build custom site layouts. This increases the cost. It also has a slightly steeper learning curve. As you can see, typical page, several images, some effects, those kinds of things. A good example of a basic page layout. As always, let's pop over to GT metrics, all the same settings, hit analyze on there, and pop over to the page speed as well and hit analyze on there. And there we go, there's our GT metrics score coming back. Again, paid not too much attention to these web vitals. They are kind of server related, but we can see we've got a performance and structure of 1995, so pretty acceptable. We could probably do with a little bit of optimizing on there, but let's hop over and take a look at the page speed now for Google and see where we are with that. Okay, so coming back with a pretty decent result to start off with, getting close to the 90s when it comes to mobile, so that's a good starting point. How about the desktop? Decent results on there, but you'd expect decent results. And you can see if we take a look at the lab data, that's actually coming back with pretty respectable scores. So there's still some work to do on the mobile version of this, but I'm pretty sure you could probably get this to where you want it to be. We needed some tweaking. And if I'm honest, you would expect this to come straight out of the box, seeing as it is one of the pre-built templates to kind of be optimized for various different screen sizes and so on. So this looks a little bit not great. Okay, so that's where we kind of are with this basic speed test for Beaver Builder. Now, Beaver Builder is one of those sleeper products in my opinion. Yes, we all know about it, but many of us have never used it on a full project to see why the fans of it are just so happy. Dig a little deeper though and you can easily see why. It's primarily built around stability, and in the WordPress Page Builder world, that does count for a hell of a lot. Now, Divi has come a long way over the past few years and still remains a firm favourite with many people. Sadly though, I'm not one of those people. While the interface has certainly improved, I just think there are way too many options scattered all over the place. My brain just can't cope with all that stuff. So let's start by saying that Divi comes in two flavours, the theme with Builder included and a standalone builder. In this example, I'm only going to be looking at the theme and builder bundle. My thinking here is that you would expect the theme and builder to provide the most optimized platform to build your website upon. So the builder itself offers a similar method of switching between building modes in a somewhat similar fashion to what we'll see inside WPBakery. Only in Divi's case, it's actually truly useful. You can build in either a visual way or a wireframe mode, much like the aforementioned backend mode in WPBakery. Now, this could be useful if you want to take the visual clutter away and see exactly what you've included in a page. You can also use grid mode where the bounding boxes and all related options are displayed on screen around your design elements. This is useful if you have a lot of layers going on in your design and you just want some visual clarity. Now, as there's only one version of Divi available, you are getting access to pretty much everything including the kitchen sink. So this means you get the full editing experience, access to the theme builder, pop-ups, dynamic data and loads more, including a pretty comprehensive library of design templates. Now, much like Brizy, there are some great designs included, which is a real bonus. Now, my personal biggest bugbear with Divi is the overall interface. It just feels like there's way too much going on, and that's mainly because, well, there is. Divi offers so many features and options, it could be totally overwhelming for the newer user. I much prefer the streamlined way in which Brizy has handled interface design. It's so much more elegant, but in Divi's defense, it does have a lot more options to cope with over what Brizy offers. Now, on a final note regarding the interface, there's one thing that bugs the absolute crap out of me. When you open a settings panel up by either selecting the settings cog on a widget or by double-clicking the widget, you then have to click to close that panel down when you've finished. This is super frustrating and time-consumingly pointless, so please just sort that out. But if you can get past some of these annoyances, you do find a solid WordPress page builder buried beneath the clutter. Both a standalone page builder and a theme with a builder integrated. A well-established product with a solid marketplace selling designs and extensions. Support for building custom templates for WooCommerce. Dynamic content integration. Extensive global styling support. The interface could be clunky in use. Overwhelming for new users with a sheer number of options on display inside the editor. It can slow down your website. So once again, we're going to be using one of the pre-built templates. This time we're taking a look at using this particular one, and as you can see, very similar in style to lots of the other ones that we have used for these particular speed tests. As before, let's run that GT metrics and the Google Page Speed Insights tests. There we go, there's our GT metrics. Looking not too bad, 1.5 second, not bad. I'm sure you could optimize this a little bit better. That's the GT metrics. Let's take a look at the Page Speed Insights, and whoa, that is not looking particularly good. So, what's the desktop looking like? Desktop's coming back pretty well, so I think there's a fair old bit of work on a Divi site when it's working with mobile to get that up to speed. Now, Divi has been around for a long time. It offers a compelling lifetime deal and has all the features and more that most users could ever need. The interface, while well presented, feels overly cumbersome and a little disjointed with so many features it can be overwhelming for newer users. Sadly, straight out of the box though, optimization isn't great and it does have a significant impact on the front-end loading times of your website designs. So WPBakery used to be the visual composer, but that changed a few years ago and, well, caused massive brand confusion and probably did more harm than good. But not to go into that too much, let me just say that WPBakery is a page builder that's been bundled with hundreds if not thousands of themes sold via the popular ThemeForest website. Now, this was my first real exposure to page builders when I moved over to WordPress, and at the time it was a breath of fresh air from the typical HTML and CSS method of using tools like Dreamweaver. Yes, I am that old. Now, fast forward a few years and we still have WPBakery bundled with many ThemeForest themes, and while it's had a little bit of a facelift, it's still the same underlying concept of a front-end and a back-end editor. The back-end editor is a more of a skeleton layout tool with no real way of visually designing anything at all. The front-end editor, well, that isn't that great either. Now, as I just said, the back-end editor is basically a skeleton system where you build up your rows and columns, insert widgets, and fill out a selection of information. Now, some of this information can be done via handy select options, while others, like image size, have to be inserted manually by using WordPress sizes. Yeah, I really mean that. You have to manually type in WordPress sizes. Is this 1995? Let's just say that while WPBakery is in this list of alternatives, it isn't a viable one, and I would suggest pretty much ignoring it in favour of one of the more modern and fully featured options available. A well-established product included in thousands of themes. You can buy an extended license to include it in your SaaS or theme. included Grid Builder to build custom posts and media grids with the editor. An odd licensing system with either a single license or an extended license aimed at theme and SaaS developers. A clunky interface in use. Feels dated and not as intuitive as many more modern page builders. The separate front-end and back-end editors. So for the testing out when it comes to WPBakery, I've grabbed one of their templates. It's nothing complex. There's several images inside there. Typical kind of thing that you'd expect to see on a page. Let's go ahead and run a GTmetrix test on this. We'll analyze that, and we'll also do the same thing on page speed on Google, and we'll see what they come back with. Okay, and it comes back with pretty respectable scores, to be honest. I think one of the key reasons for this is the fact that I'm using the GeneratePress theme free version underneath all this, so that's already a good starting point. But I am actually quite surprised to see how well this has fared, even on a fairly simplistic page. If we jump over to the page speed insights, again, we're coming back with a fairly decent starting point, but again, I think a big part of this is going to be down to GeneratePress. So if you are unfortunate enough to have to use WPBakery, maybe take a look at getting a good solid theme to go with it, something like GeneratePress, which gives you a good starting point anyway. Desktop scores, again, pretty respectable. But taking all that into consideration, I still would not recommend WPBakery just because of the fact it's such a dated and clunky way of working, and it's not really focused on the designer's experience. Now, WPBakery is one of those OG page builders for WordPress, but it's not always a good thing being one of the first. While the interface has improved as well as the overall speed on the front end, it is still a very poor design experience. The back-end design method is dated and not at all intuitive, and the front-end experience is just a little bit better, but still very annoying in use. So for me, WPBakery is a legacy builder that only really still has a place here because it's bundled with so many themes. Without that, I think this builder would have just slipped into obscurity in favor of a more combined approach employed by most modern page builders. Now, another page builder that's been around for a long time is Visual Composer. Now, this is not to be mistaken with the Visual Composer that became WPBakery. Yeah, I'm confused too. Anyway, let's leave that behind and talk a little bit more about Visual Composer in just a bit of detail. First, let's talk about the interface. Now, parts of this look clean and modern, and parts look totally disjointed. For example, let's take the widgets panel. In my eyes, this is all over the place with a real lack of any kind of consistency. Instead, we have loads of individual company icons, company logos, etc., and this just looks very cheap and disjointed. But dig a little deeper and the interface does actually clear up. But it still retains some of the features present in WPBakery. So for example, the setting of margins, padding, borders, etc., and this kind of feels overly cumbersome for what you're trying to do. I also find the need to double click a widget to open up the editing options just a little bit frustrating. It's either double click or click once and then use the series of pop out options to select the correct element and then choose to edit it. I mean, come on, there's got to be better ways than that. You do have all the usual tools we come to expect from WordPress Page Builders though in the free version, and it offers a decent amount of features. Some more advanced options like dynamic content are locked behind the Pro version, so you won't be getting those more advanced features without buying a license. But there is still more than enough here to build a page for any kind of typical website. Now, to access things like WooCommerce integration, the header and footer builder, dynamic data, pop-up, etc., you'll need to go Pro. But you can't feel too hard done by though, as this is pretty much the same with all the builders that we've included in this video. Now, one area that is really good to see is in the Pro version that it offers a comprehensive grid builder tool, so you'll be able to customize the WordPress post loop. It's also good to see that Visual Composer ditched the awful front-end and back-end design ethos employed in the earlier days and is still used in WPBakery. That was and still is an awful way of working in my opinion. Pros. Free versions available. Supports dynamic content, relatively simple interface to get started with, a well-specified free version, works with most modern themes, it's got a theme builder, and a pop-up builder. Confusion about the original Visual Composer being renamed to WPBakery. Cluttered and inconsistent editor interface. You can't directly select an element on the page. You need to select it via 2 extra clicks via a pop-up menu. So this is the design we're going to be using for this test. As you can see, it's a typical kind of design. several images, some text, nothing you haven't expected to see. So we'll use this as the basis. So first of all, let's hop over to GTmetrix, and I've set this up to be in the closest server to me for this particular example, which is based in London. I'm going to hit Analyze on there, and while we're waiting for that, we'll pop over to Google PageSpeed, and I've got the same inside there, so we're going to run Analyze on that as well. Okay, so there's the results when we're looking at GTmetrix. Now, obviously, certain things like, the contentful paint, those kinds of things, these are going to be influenced by the server this is based on, but it gives us a good example of how well optimized this is. I still wouldn't take GTmetrix to be all and end all, as always, but it's a good starting point. So we can see, we can have a look at the top issue. So serve static assets from an efficient cache policy, want to use a CDN, the kinds of things you'd expect to see, but pretty respectable results when it comes to GTmetrix. Let's take a look at the one that most of us actually are more interested in these days, which is the Google PageSpeed. And as we can see, the mobile does not come back amazingly well. First contentful paint, 4.8 seconds, speed index. Now again, like I say, certain aspects of this are going to be influenced by the server. It's going to have a knock-on effect. There's no CDN optimization side of things on the server level being used in this example. If we look at the desktop, you can see that comes back with a value of 91. So there's a bit of work to be done when it comes to the mobile side of things when using Visual Composer. Now, while Visual Composer is a solid page builder, I can't say that it feels on par with some of the other tools I've included here today. Yet, it's being actively developed, but in use it feels slower to work with and a little bit more dated in its approach to page and site building. So this leads to a slower design process with more clicks needed to do simple things like select a widget or make quick changes. Now, Oxygen Builder has picked up a lot of avid supporters since version 3 was released, and for good reason. It's a very powerful theme builder, and yes, I said a theme builder. Oxygen differs from most of the Elementor alternatives listed here today in the fact that it just totally overrides the theme. This gives you all the tools then to build your own theme using the Oxygen Builder itself. Now obviously there are many benefits, and the main one being that you don't need to load in your theme files alongside your page builder files. Now this can be especially important when all you want to do is simply override the normal WordPress design theme system and just replace that with your own design. This reduction in bloat means that sites built with Oxygen generally fare really well when it comes to speed tests. And this is probably one of the main reasons that Oxygen is so highly regarded by its avid user base. But what exactly does Oxygen offer? Well, firstly, there's a compelling lifetime deal available. Now with the recent pricing changes that they brought in, there's now a tiered system depending upon what features you actually need. But my recommendation here would be to go for the ultimate plan, as this covers you for all future project requirements. Plus the price difference isn't all that significant, and this is kind of probably what the developers were aiming for when they kind of brought this pricing structure in. Now in use, Oxygen does have a slightly steeper learning curve to the likes of Elementor or Brizy, but it does share a lot of similarities with the Bricks builder. You'll find that both of these options are more geared towards experienced users who like to have full control with less hand-holding. Now this doesn't mean to say that you have to be proficient in coding or fully understand HTML, CSS and JavaScript, but what it does mean is that if you do, you'll be able to take Oxygen further and have a lot of granular control over all of your projects. Now once you get used to working with classes in Oxygen, you'll find this just one of the areas in which it excels. You can very quickly make design changes globally in seconds. Combine this with the global styling options, built-in CSS editor, the code editor, and way more, and you'll have a very powerful tool at your fingertips should you want to invest the time in learning all its nuances. Now all the usual tools are here, along with a selection of pre-built blocks to get you started or to be used as inspirational prototyping tools. You have plenty of options for dynamic content with tools like Metabox, ACF, etc. Unfortunately, on the downside, I'm no fan of the Oxygen interface. It feels dated and clunky. While it does share a lot of the same design ethos as tools like Bricks, as mentioned a little earlier, Bricks pulls off the design with much more streamlined and modern feel. It's also pretty slow loading in the editor, often taking up to 13 to 15 seconds just to simply load. Now this may not seem long until you are waiting for it to load in just to make small tweaks to your design. Then it very quickly mounts up, especially when you have many of the other editors covered here taking less than 5 seconds to open up. Now finally, the conditions feature for when your templates will be used can be a little less intuitive in certain circumstances. But these are just little niggles and they soon disappear once you get used to the Oxygen workflow. Websites built with Oxygen score high on page speed results. Powerful and fully featured tool for building WordPress websites. It's theme agnostic, it has a theme builder, dynamic data support, a comprehensive class-based design system, global styling options, integration with Gutenberg, still a little clunky, and WooCommerce support. Editor could be a little slow to load. The post-grid widget is slow when using dynamic data. It has a steeper learning curve than many other WordPress builders. It's got a dated looking interface. It's not overly beginner friendly. WooCommerce support is still limited and requires a very specific plan. So this is the Oxygen page we're starting off with. It's using, again, one of the pre-built templates that ships with the builder itself, all on the same server. So we've got a fairly level playing field. It's not perfect. But let's hop over now into the GTmetrix dashboard. We'll run that analysis and we'll do the same for page speed insights, and we'll let those run through and see what results we get. There's our starting point with the GTmetrix results. Doesn't look too bad, it's coming back pretty well. And if we go to page speed insights, not as good as I thought it would be, but I'm sure there's still plenty of scope for tweaking these kinds of things. We're not using things like WebP images and so on, so there's scope. And if we take a look at the desktop options, again, not as good as I was expecting it to be. Now, Oxygen Builder is a solid alternative to Elementor, and while the learning curve is just a little bit steeper than some of the other options I've covered here, it is worth the time and effort to learn, as it can result in fast loading, easily modified and updated designs. On the downside, it can feel a little slow and less intuitive in use at times. Now, I'm going to keep this fairly simple when it comes to Xyon Builder, as I don't have a lot of experience in using it, so please do take this with a pinch of salt, as these are generally fairly superficial observations of the builder itself. So let's start off with the interface. Now, can you remember back when I said about not being a massive fan of the Divi or Visual Composer stroke WPBakery interfaces? Yeah? Well, Xyon is basically a hybrid of those two models with some design tweaks. You could certainly be forgiven for thinking you'd install Visual Composer on your first look at the editor. So with that out of the way, let's talk about templates. Now, there are quite a lot on offer and they all look fairly decent. Sadly though, they are pretty much all locked behind the Pro paywall. So in my testing of the free version, and yes, there is a free version, I think I found about 3 page layouts, could load each one of them, and they didn't include any typography settings. So that means when you do load them in, they all just look a little bit rubbish. Now, no mention of typography or fonts in the template used or descriptions or anything, so we don't know what they're using, but more on typography and fonts in a moment. Now, I thought I'd have a look at quickly applying some global styling to quickly get up to speed and get the design looking much better. Well, if there is global styling, it's either not included in the free version or it's hidden away from plain sight. It could be that the styling has been inherited from the theme though, but there doesn't appear to be any options to override that and use your own styling straight out of the box when loading in any of these designs. Now, speaking of styling, out of the box, styling typography feels really slow. You need to do several clicks to get to the settings. And annoyingly, Google Fonts aren't active by default. And when you do want to use one, you have to search for it, activate it in the settings panel, and come out of the editor just to do this. Surely there has to be a better way to avoid unnecessarily loading in resources to having to manually search and install fonts from the settings panel. But enough of the negative points. Let's talk about some of the positives of Xyon Builder. The editor does feel snappy and loads in really quickly. Sadly, even with the positive feelings of speed, doing most things just feels clunky and overly complex. Wait a minute. I did say this was the positive section. Sorry. Now, you can switch between multiple view modes, tree mode, wireframe mode, and section view. These feel very reminiscent of the likes of Brizy and Divi. You can save sections as templates and use those anywhere in your project. But unfortunately, on the Mac, using dark mode and switching the editor to dark mode as well means that you can't actually see the name that you're giving to your template, as it's still using black text on an almost black background. I mean, come on. Now, to be honest, I'm going to leave it here, as the 2 times that I've tested Xyon Builder, I really haven't enjoyed it. Yes, there are lots of options. The Pro version brings support for tools like ACF. There are loads more options to look into. But if you don't enjoy using the tool, it just becomes an absolute chore. Now again, your mileage may vary, but for me, Xyon Builder just isn't a tool that I would choose to use in a real-world project. There's a lifetime deal available. It's an established product. It has dynamic data support, global styling support, somewhere, theme builder, header and footer builder, blog post builder or loop, slider and pop-up builder, repeater query support, and a snappy interface. Dynamic data still has minimal support. Buggy even though it's in version 2.7 plus. The cyan design we're going to be using, as you can see, the fonts are a little bit all over the shop, but I'm not really going to go at the time and effort of going through and trying to figure out what fonts they are and restyling everything. We'll just go with the standard default fonts. So let's go ahead and analyze on GT metrics and do exactly the same on page speed. So there we go, there's our results when we're taking a look at GT metrics. Pretty decent results, you can't really complain too much about those, but I'm sure they will slow down just a little bit when we actually take a look at installing the relevant Google fonts and using those. Let's take a look at the page speed insights, and again, coming back pretty respectable on the mobile and desktop, very, very respectable. While Cyan may offer a lot of features, I found it to be a bit of a chore in use. Yes, it's fast loading and responsive, but that doesn't make it a pleasant user experience. It generally feels like a combination of many page builders without the streamlined approach employed by the likes of Bricks. It's good to see a free version available, and if you're thinking of getting into Cyan, I'd recommend starting with a free version to see if it appeals to your way of working. For me though, it's a hard pass right now. So I would love to get your feedback on what you think of the builders that I've covered in this video, and anything I've missed out you'd like me to see me cover in a future video, let me know in the comment section below. Now, as always, all the links are in the description, and if you found this video useful and you got value from it, why not give that thumbs up button a click? However, if you didn't get value, feel free to hit the thumbs down button twice, as that works pretty well too. My name's Paul C, this is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.